Hello, everybody. Welcome into a preseason CSAA preview here on the Rundown. Brandon Worth here, joined by my compadres and our football team here this fall. JT Scarpelli, Jason Kostecki, representing Cardinal football on Big Country 100.9. Fellas, welcome.
Hello.
Great to have you guys. And it'll be myself, Brandon Worth, alongside my new partner, Mark Holcomb.
Hey.
Reed City Football. We're going to do this thing, aren't we?
Let's go Coyotes.
It's going to be great. It's going to be great. We're going to go through all the teams here. We are live, and it's only fitting that we start at Big Rapids, as right behind us we have the Big Rapids scrimmage going on here a week before opening kickoff. Really fun stuff. And for you guys, especially, you saw this team last year, an absolutely phenomenal title-earning year, championship seasons. It's been so long for this town, this team, and there's a lot of expectations going in here this year.
Yeah, there are. They lost a couple key contributors. There's some question marks coming into this year, but there's also some returners that they're going to know exactly what's up with. You know, so you have like Garrett Foster's one of the best football players in West Michigan, probably. Jack Bowman's not too far behind him. And then a lot of their line is returned. The big blows for him are Riley Venix at quarterback. So you have a younger guy in Cole Heist stepping up. Now the benefit of, or the bright side of that is that Cole actually got a lot of PT last year when Riley got hurt. And then Philip Wilbur leaving, that leaves a huge hole in the defense. So there's some question marks in the middle there. Garrett, it sounds like it's going to float all over the place, being as dynamic as he is. But yeah, there's a lot of expectations coming back because they got a lot of key returners, even with some of those departures. The expectation is, unfortunately for you guys, another Big Rapids win in week 3. But you know, they got to go up to Reed City, so it's going to be tough. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, I think JT hit on it. You know, replacing Riley Venix is not going to be easy. But the good thing for, Cole Heist is he's got 2 running backs that are dynamic. They can make plays and ease some of that burden transitioning in. He did look well those 2 games. We watched him last year that Riley was hurt.
He managed the game quite well, and we just saw him make a couple passes here. But it's going to be a different offense. It's no secret that Cole isn't quite as fleet-footed as Riley. Not many high school athletes are. That's why Riley's at Northwood University. So it's a little bit different of an offense where they're probably going to rely a little more on Cole's arm and his game management, which is good for a young quarterback, right? And when you have an ensemble of Garrett Foster and Jack Bowman, you can make that work. I mean, you just kind of feed those 2 guys. You have a solid offensive line, kind of buoyed by Caden Schuberg up the middle. You'll have Counselor will be back as well. And then there's a couple other key guys down there that they'll move the ball. So they'll be able to move it on the ground. And then Cole, if he can just execute some passes, they'll be able to move the ball. I actually feel like the bigger question is going to be on defense for them, because they lost in the secondary. They lost Dabowski. They lost Venix. They have a lot of younger guys stepping in, trying to take over in that secondary, and Kurt Wilbur, newcomer Owen Craven, some of those guys. So how are they going to step in and kind of fill those shoes? But also in moving Garrett, where you move him from, the way the defense worked last year is they would have Garrett on the outside back or funnel into Phillip on the inside, who would clean it up. And not many guys got away from Philip Wilbur Cheese last year. So this year there's a question mark on who's on the inside. Is Garrett there? Is he dropping to safety? Doesn't look like he's going to be on the end that much, or on the outside that much. So it's like, what's the defensive dynamic going to be? And week 1 will be interesting, right? Because they play another T offense in Paw Paw. Same style offense as Reed City. I know that's why Coach Seltzer wanted him on the schedule, but they have Coach's kid, Stray. He's going to Kentucky, right? I think he was rated like a number 6 player in the state of Michigan, right. Football player. So, I mean, they got some real deal guys there, but they're not going to throw it as much is the expectation. So that secondary isn't going to be tested, but I guess Fruitport is going to spread it out a little more in week 2. They got to go to Fruitport as well. Fruitport didn't win a game last year, but they're in that conference with Spring Lake and Whitehall. I mean, it's a tough conference. So we'll see how that secondary is. But
yeah, Brandon and I were watching a little bit of the first scrimmage here when they were playing North Muskegon. They got tore up a little bit, to start with again, but some young guys that didn't play a lot of minutes transitioning in. The big one's going to be, Cheese putting pressure on that quarterback and making him throw quickly or get that pressure that I think Big Rapids is going to miss, at least at the start of the season, until somebody figures out that role to make those quarterbacks make quicker decisions.
It'll probably be a little bit of a tryout early on. So hopefully by week 3, they got it figured out for you guys.
Yeah, week 3, we're going to find out who the real top dog is. No disrespect to Tri-County. They're going to be a good football team too. But we'll jump to our side there in transition. Reed City's a team. Last year, 1-3 start. Whole town counting them out, having a lot of question marks saying, man, this isn't the same team. There's a lot of athletes on this team, and they're not winning enough. And, it's a good expectation to be winning 3 or 4 games in your first, or 3 or 4 games in your first 4, right? So it's definitely a season that we saw the comeback story. We saw some really big decisions made that were huge and beneficial, moving Hammond from quarterback to running back in week 2. Really just changed it. It was the best 11. That's what Coach Schenkel, the offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators looked at that roster and they said, we need the best 11 on the field. And we saw how far this team went, and it really was on the legs of Max Hammond, John Andres, and Zach Erickson in that backfield.
Yeah, and I think that's the question mark for the Coyotes, right, is how do you replace those 3 backs? 2,000-yard rushers, strong, fast, got to the outside quick. Johnny did, and once he got to the outside, you weren't going to catch him. So there's some question marks in the backfield, but I think the Coyotes have some guys to step in there as well, especially with the whole offensive line back this year.
Whole offensive line, defensive line returns, and that's something especially we saw last year in the game. Trenches was won by you guys, and especially with the big plays in the first half, really established the tempo, able to ride it out for the win. So it's going to be something very interesting to see now. A couple of your guys' line gone, ours all the way coming back, but we're replacing all of our backs. You guys still have Garrett Foster, one of the best players in the area, so it's going to be really fun. But Tri-County, too, is a team, guys, obviously has really made a name for themselves. Coach Butler has really done a great job. The Baronwald's really shouldering a large load, and now we're going to see what they're going to be able to do this year, especially with a winnable schedule for them as opposed to Reed City. We're going through a gauntlet, Mark. We're going to be traveling. We're going to be seeing some really good football teams, a lot of ranked football teams, and you guys as well. You're going to be playing Coopersville, obviously starting off with Paw Paw, one of the best teams in arguably the state of Michigan, let alone Division IV. Reed City going to be playing Pontiac Notre Dame. Going to be playing some really tough teams as well. Kingsley, the state champs, to open up.
Don't forget Kingsley.
Can't forget them, right? The first week of the season, just the state champs.
Opener right there.
Right, exactly. Then we're going to be playing Beale City, who's a prominent D8 powerhouse as well, going to their place. So that's going to be tough. But Tri-County is also a team that we're going to have to watch out for, and even in the silver as well. I mean, Kent City's made a name for themselves. Even though they haven't really gotten to the next step to be on the level of Big Rapids and Reed City, they are still playing really good football. And now they're going to have a little competitive nature with Central Montcalm now in the silver this year too.
Yeah, and you have, we were talking about it before we launched here, you have Emmett Lingman down there. Kid's a D1 baseball arm, right? He's going to, that's my thing, but he's going to give it one more go as quarterback down there. I mean, that kid can throw a ball 70 yards in the air.
Yeah.
The question is who catches it.
He could hit us from midfield right there.
He could. He could throw a football and knock the camera down from midfield, but who's going to catch it, right? And then further, who's going to block for him and stuff like that. Football, it's a team game. You can't just have one guy take the whole game over. So, I mean, a lot of question marks out of them. You go down to even Grant and Newaygo. There's some key departures and athletes out of Newaygo. And then you have really the key departure out of Grant in Oakley Obanoff in multiple sports. That kid really, I don't want to say carried the entire program, but was a prominent part of the production in any sport that he played. He's gone. So who kind of steps up? Now, maybe some of these schools do what Reed City seems to always do, right? These guys are talking about, we got to replace the whole backfield. Well, I remember that question came up a couple years ago, and boom, there comes, Johnny Andres and some of these guys that's like, never heard of this kid, but he just racked up 200 yards. Like, what's going on, right? So maybe some of these other schools figure that out too. Yeah,
it's going to be really fun. Week 3 is definitely going to be the one to watch. We got, obviously, Big Rapids, Reed City squaring off, up north, up 131 in Reed City. We also got M37 rivalry, too. Grant, Newaygo. Those two towns don't like each other. Nope. They're going to be playing in week 3. The same week. It's a shame because we would have 2 games of the week in 1 week. It's great, but we can't cover both of them at the same time. But, I mean, there's going to be some really big games this year. And there's going to be games where we're going to be fighting in the cold weather by the time we get to week 8 and 9, where the wind is going to be a factor, too. It's blowing into our headsets right now.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a lot of key games. But especially for you guys, what's really the one that you see on Big Rapids' schedule? Maybe outside of Reed City, that's going to be the one that's really going to determine the outcome of this season.
I'll throw this to Jason.
So I was doing some research of the last couple of years. Reed City, obviously. Big Rapids has lost one CSA game in the last 2 years, and that was at Reed City 2 years ago. So that's just going to be a big game. Tri-County last year impressed me. I think that they are going to be good in the league, and they beat Reed City 2 years ago, and they could do that to anybody here. I think one game that's going to be a test for us outside of the league early is that Fruitport game. Everybody's Fruitport. They didn't win a game last year. 2 years ago, I think they were almost getting near the state semifinals. So
they're good.
Tough. They play in a tough competition. We can't overlook that because Papa is going to be no joke. We could go 0-2 going into Reed City on a little bit.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden Reed City, that's pressure. That's a lot of pressure.
It's a must win at that point.
Yeah.
So I still think that Reed City game 3, is going to set the tone for the rest of our season. No matter how we start those first 2 games,
But I agree that Fruitport game is a game that could easily be overlooked because of that record.
Right.
And you just don't want to do it. I mean, Coach Seltzer was telling me they have a really young roster, so they kind of went through it last year. You don't think they're going to be better this year?
Yeah.
So they, that's gonna, and you got to go there. You got to go there. I mean, it's never easy to win going to an opponent's place. Tri-County, Reed City, you name it. It's tough to go to those places and win.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is the bottom of the CSA typically isn't great. But those schools on the Lakeshore in that conference, they're tough top to bottom every week. They were 0-9, but that 0-9 is a little different when you look at the teams they played and the records and who made the playoffs and those deep runs.
And a lot of the scores were pretty close too.
Right.
Yeah, they didn't just get murdered all year long. So I agree. I think that's out of conference. That's probably that game can really make or break the year. 0-2 to Reed City versus 1-1 going against Reed City. That's a completely different look.
For sure. Now we'll throw it over our side here, Mark. I know we're going to be looking forward to every game working together this year for the first time, but what's kind of a game that you're seeing outside of obviously week 3, rivalry week is one that you're looking out for?
Well, Kingsley, right out of the gate. I mean, you hate to have a barometer game being your first game of the year, but I think the Kingsley game will set the tone maybe. I mean, we don't have Kingsley Tri-County back-to-back this year, so going 0-2, I mean, we were looking at the same thing last year, but we had Chippewa Hills in between that and the Big Rapids game. So, and then that Notre Dame team that you mentioned that's coming up to see us later in the year. I think those are the 2 big non-conference games that we have this year. It's later in the season than your Fruitport game is, but anytime you play out of conference, you get to choose who you're going to play when you choose an out of conference team, and you're always trying to. I think a coach like Schenkel is trying to improve yourself. You're trying to get better. You don't want to pick a patsy out of conference to play, especially when you're trying to get points for the postseason as well. So I think the Kingsley game and then that Notre Dame game when they come up to Reed City in October are going to be 2 huge games.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm going to be looking forward to week 9, especially against Beal City. 1, going to Beal City. 2, this is a school that has athletes left, right, and center, regardless of sport. And they've proved it in football. But you have to imagine for them, the fact that Reed City's going to their place, that's going to mean a little extra to those guys, being like, oh, it's a D6 team, a powerhouse, but we're a D8. We're going to stand our ground. This is a home game, and it's week 9, right? All the playoff position in the world is going to be decided on that game, no matter what happens before then.
And I got to be honest, on all the schedules, that's like one of my favorite games that was scheduled.
It's the coolest.
Amazing.
Yeah, it really is.
We all talk about Friday Night Lights. Every community is excited about football, but I read an article from the Morning Sun just last week about Beal City football, and stores closed down and people are there.
Yes.
And that highlight of Division 6, Reed City, again, a perennial state football school coming. It's week 9. Like, Beal City All Rights are probably going to be in the playoffs by that point. Be a cool atmosphere, I think.
Yeah, that's an exciting game.
Yeah, we can't wait for it. We can't wait for you guys to join us all football season long. You can catch myself, Mark Holcomb. We're going to be calling Reed City Couch football on Y102, 6:30 p.m. every Friday, except for next week, Thursday, at Kingsley. The state champs in a revenge game is going to be really fun. You can catch as well Coach Scarpelli and Coach Kostecki on Big Country 100.9 with Cardinal football. It'll also be, I believe, you guys are at 6:35 on Big Country 100.9 next Thursday here against the Paw Paw Red Wolves.
Yep, here. They had to go down to Paw Paw last year. It was a slugfest on turf.
Yep.
Could be a different story, but that's you're talking about going back to something you said a while ago about setting the tone a little bit, not to add a little pad or runtime here, but setting the tone. That Reed City game, you mentioned Philip Wilbur. Philip Wilbur was a tone setter for Big Rapids. Who's gonna do it this year? I think Garrett's gonna be the guy who's gonna set that tone for him, but who's gonna be the guy who kind of gets them fired up and hitting right away? They're gonna need that against Paw Paw.
They're definitely going to need it. I think Jack Deitch could be a really impactful player for Reed City this year.
Getting the same thing.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun. Be sure to follow us on the Rundown, Big Country 100.9 on YouTube. And we're going to get all your football coverage. You can catch us live over the airwaves. You'll catch postseason highlights, all those things coming up here on the BigRapidsDailyNews.com website as well. Fellas, I guess we depart until 7 days from now.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. And until then, can't wait.
Guys, I'm looking forward to it. Should be a fun year. And
Yeah.
now meeting you guys, I knew you, but meeting you face to face, we can get a text group going and get the poll up who does the best broadcast. And week by week.
We'll start a fan club right here,
Yeah,
the
there
four
we
of
go.
us. I think that'd be cool. Let us know on social media. But thank you guys so much for another edition of The Rundown. Stay tuned for next week's episode on CSA football coverage here on the Big Rapids Media Network.